So it's a slow news Saturday, and there's not a lot of Trump stuff to complain about. Well, there's Epstein, and there's a big, beautiful bill, and there's cutting funds from PBS. So there actually is a lot of stuff to talk about Trump-wise, but we're going to take a quick bit away from that, a little bit of a breath cleanser, if you will, and deal with some stories on some people who really aren't our business, but for some reason, we can't get enough of. This long article, which is basically two stories, one story you've known about, one story you probably didn't pick up on, we're calling it corporate accountability. At least that's what the chyron in the picture says for the thumbnail, because this is a time for people who are in charge to basically get their comeuppance. Maybe. As I said, these are stories that really aren't necessarily our business. Well, one of them kind of is. One of them is just really odd. But that's when we're starting off with first off. And it happened, of all places, at a Coldplay concert. A Coldplay concert. Of all places, where we begin the story on a few days back on the 16th during this concert at Gillette Stadium, where a viral jumbotron clip captured Andy Byron, this guy here, who's the CEO of data analytics firm Astronomer Inc, in an intimate moment with the company's chief people officer. Keep that in mind. This woman here, Kristin Cabot. The pair froze when they showed them on the Coldplay kiss cam. Chris Martin said a joke going there and saying either they're having an affair or they just very shy. A day later, we found out they were having an affair and a bit shy about being caught on the kiss cam for all the world to see. Astronomer was placed on leave the day next, and of course, afterwards, he essentially resigned later this afternoon. So we had two headlines today and 3 or 4 headlines between the 16th and now on what went down with this one right here. Now, the co-founder and CPO of the company, Peter DeJoy, is going to be your interim CEO for the moment. The incident stole a moment of private actions and public spectacle. But the private action and public spectacle is because the chief people officer and the chief executive officer are not a couple. In fact, the chief executive officer has a wife, which is the problem. The concert venue warns guests when they go on, they'll be filmed, just like you go to a baseball game, just like you go to a basketball game, just like mayhem in those commercials. You will be filmed, things pop up, and things like kiss cams, things happen. So please be wary that you're with who you need to be with and not doing something you shouldn't be doing. There you go. So these things are common, moments where the wrong people get on camera and they look at each other and they go, no, this guy. That happens a lot. Unfortunately, these two guys, this guy and gal, if you will, were canoodling as if they were a couple, because they were. They just weren't the legal couple that they should have been, because it's not the legal wife of Mr. Byron, or words to that effect. Now, these are things you have to be worried about for these type of things going forward. And it really got us a shake up in the space-time continuum where people had a chance to not talk about Trump for a while and talk about the infidelity and the bad things of this guy right here, especially today as now the rumblings go down to him actually being fired, resigning, losing his job from the company going forward before bad behavior. That's what we're calling this. Is this some sort of actual comeuppance? Is this actually some accountability happening with the corporate level right here? Personal conduct between corporate drama tends to get blown out of proportion or blown under the rug. This one probably out of proportion. And then we have the resignation. The viral response has been heavy, where people are basically not giving them any flack going forward on this one. This was just a bad look all the way around, and a bad way to find out that your husband's having an affair with a person in the company, because it's a viral moment at a Coldplay concert of all things. This actually, because Coldplay actually did their best to downplay the incident and not talk about it. So this essentially exercises the sins of overplaying yellow on corporate radio. I guess we go with that one. But we do know that if you're going to canoodle with people who you work with that aren't your actual husbands or wives, make sure you don't do it where all people can see in a public place, even though you think it's really, really, really overcast. And make sure there's no kiss cams, because this is where we are these days. Meanwhile, a guy you don't know anything about is also getting the axe today as executive director of the NFL Players Association. He actually announced his resignation a couple of days ago, and this came after revelations that he had some issues with his credit card bills, with his expense reports, because he billed the union, his bosses, his job, his American Express receipts, visits to strip clubs in Miami Gardens and Atlanta that totaled over $3,000, and labeled them as player engagement events. This is where the joke about players hanging out in strip clubs is put in there. You can just sort of think about it for a second, let it wash over you, take it in for a moment. Got it? You got it in there? Okay, let's move on. So reports show that Howell expensed $738 in luxury car rides at a Miami airport to Tootsie's Cabaret in November 2023, where he remained there for about 7 hours. Similar outing happened in February, recently, at the NFLPA Summit in Atlanta, with VIP rooms and club ATM withdrawals of totaling $2,426. Now, as a person who has to, be fully, full disclosure, I have more than once frequented strip clubs. I have used those ATMs. They will overcharge you like crazy, and they do keep records of who uses them. And if you're a person of import, who I am not, they will use it against you. Not explicitly forbidding by policy, however, the look is bad. The look is very bad. A former employee noted that, quote, "No one in their right mind would think that is optically good to be here," unquote. Additionally, Howell faced scrutiny over conflicts of interest, serving as the Carlyle Group consultant and withholding parts of an arbitration ruling about ownership collusion and things like that, just hiding things in the background. In the meantime, Howell stepped aside quickly, so that makes it look good for him for his next big corporate job where he can rob from the rich and keep more for the rich, I guess. And the executive committee have actually moved really fast to pick this thing up and get the mess settled really quickly. But of course, it shows another case of a person in charge misusing the dues money they get for personal entertainment and damaging the member trusts going forward. Who will be the next member of the NFLPA? This is the person that stands up for their union. It's their union, and fights for the rights of the millionaires against the billionaires, which we complain about it going forward. But it is indentured servitude, so you kind of understand where it goes. If you can't trust the guy to take care of the guys to, not go to strip clubs for player engagement, then who can you actually trust? A special committee is going to renew all expense practices going forward and some going backwards. Look for possible financial misconduct in the past for folks like that. The unions actually has some folks are setting up for interim leadership to take over things right now so they can put somebody fully in charge, whatever. And of course, they are dealing with the consulting issues, licensings with folks like the Carlyle Group and One Team Partners to make sure that there's no extra conflicts of interest in the deal. Lloyd did a bad, and he's gone from it. And we are better for it? Don't know, because the NFLPA doesn't necessarily affect us directly, just the game you see on TV. Astronomer Inc. and Andy Byron, well, Byron did the bad and he's left. Will that make us better going forward? I don't know, because I'm not sure Astronomer Inc. is actually a company that really affects me directly. It probably does. It probably has some sort of cloud thing that gets in the way of something I do. But in the meantime, I didn't know about the company. I didn't know about Byron. I didn't know about Cabot. I knew about Coldplay, but that was a whole nother story in itself. We are calling this very long mashup of stories corporate accountability, because these are cases where the big guys did big bads and they apparently are paying a price for it, and they're self-owning it and getting out of the way. The good part about this. How many times do you see a person in charge do very, very bad things, get away with it? Donald Trump, who, do very bad things and maybe get convicted of felonies. Donald Trump, and then is elected as a president for a second term and maybe threatening a third term, although he says it's a joke. Donald Trump. And in his second term is playing a playbook that is essentially, my opinion, destroying America as it is, and, maybe giving everything to Putin in a week or so. Donald Trump. But corporate accountability, people who do bad things and make bad decisions and do what they do, should be accountable for it. This is something that actually is an issue with us here in the U.S., where big people with lots of money, lots of power can sweep it on the rug and play nice and be better later. Andrew Cuomo. But in this case, and I guess the names I'm saying in the slide are politicians, so that's a whole nother ball of wax. Balls of wax. But in this case, these are people who are in charge of other people and other people's money, other people's livelihood, especially for the NFLPA, doing bad things. Which was worse, going to strip clubs on the company dime or having an affair with your coworker at the Coldplay concert? Coldplay. It was Coldplay. You got it. Coldplay. Your comments, please.